All right. So I want to get started talking about what this agile game design pattern means and how that affects all of us. Because it occurred to me, and I want to apologize for this, but when I started this project, I was figuring it was just going to be me and maybe one other developer on this, and that would be it. And so I'm using this methodology, and as people were coming on, I've explained things about the GDD, about how the game is intended to be directed, but I haven't really explained how to use this, how to generate tasks for yourself, what that means, what kind of freedom you get with this, and what kind of responsibilities come with it. So let's get into that. One of the first things that most people are familiar with is Agile Waterfall. There's the split of like Agile and Waterfall. If you're not familiar with it, the idea of waterfall is that you build and design, or you design everything ahead of time, and then you have a complete list of all the tasks and you just build it, and you can put deadlines and timelines and everything associated with that. The next part is agile, where you have goals that you're headed towards. You have some key features and responsibilities that you know this application needs to do, but you don't necessarily know all the details about how it's supposed to get there. You just start building it. And then kind of design as you go, build as you go. And then maybe you find out that after you spent a week doing something that, okay, we like that, but we want it to change. And so you come in to change it. Because honestly, a lot of places and people don't even really know what they want until they've seen some edition of it in the first place. And then once they see it, they're like, oh, well, it really needs to be like this, and that should really be over there, and this is over there. But it's nothing that they understood when it first started. Okay, so Agile allows us to do that. Now, AAA design patterns typically follow the waterfall pattern. The waterfall pattern works great for AAA. That's awesome for it. There's a lot of proven history behind it, and I'm not trying to say that it is faulty in any way. I am planning on using, but I am going to talk about the strategy I'm going to use instead. Agile. And a lot of people are very familiar with Agile and have looked at Agile, but I'm going to tell you something that will probably make you either think that Dan is an idiot, or B, that what on earth, this makes no sense. I don't understand that, and go look it up. Or C, you already know this, which is awesome. If you are certified in Agile, you are effectively no longer following the Agile Manifesto. If you are certified in Agile, you are no longer Agile. That's a little bit of a broad statement, but here is the general explanation of it. Agile is not Scrum. Agile is not stand-ups. It is not retrospectives. It is not all of these things. It is a manifesto that kind of expresses these are the things that we do, and then here are ways of how we accomplish that. And it does say, yes, we're going to try. The manifesto itself does not say this, but every place using this, there's a set of tools, because the people who created the Agile Manifesto were actually the originators of like Scrum, of huddles, of some of these other concepts that are coming in here into the Agile methodology, into what people get certified in. So that was part of what got pulled into it, but that does not mean Agile. So when someone gets certified, they're given a list. They know that when you come into a project, there's going to be this, there's this step. You've got to do this step. You've got to be coming after people to make sure that they're updating their statuses. You've got to be talking about things. You've got to be preparing the backlog. You've got to be using stories and tasks to generate things. But that's not really what it is. I mean, even sprints don't need to be in here. In fact, we're not going to be using sprints. So I was originally planning on using it, but I've changed my mind on that. And here's what we're going to be doing. When you are done with a task, you will pick your next task. You will pick what you want to do. Where do you pick? How do you define that? Well, take a look at the 30-second commercial. This 30-second commercial defines the done point for our game. It says, we're saying that we want our game to do all of these things. There are some implications, like we have dialogue in here, so there's going to be there's an implication that there's more dialogue than what's actually said right here. there are implications that there are more units than the actual ones that we call out. So we've got things in here, but we want to create them. So initially, our goal is to create this commercial. We want to be able to create this commercial by recording actual frames and shots of actual gameplay, and that gets pulled in. So that's what we're building. Now, when we look through here, we can say, oh, before we even do this, we already have a game. It's completed. It's done. It is absolutely done. It's not what we want to release, but it is done. It is our statement of proof, our system of record of saying what's in the game, because it's in the game. So our current game has a drone, it has a tank, it has a factory, it has a base, or whatever that one was called, I don't remember, but where you can produce the drones. It has a mini-map, or does it have a mini-map? I think it does. I don't remember. It's got a menu, so you can actually tell it to produce these things. It's got actions where you can send stuff. But what we don't have in there right now is squads. We can see that there's several things here calling out squads, and maybe that's the next thing I'm interested in. So the next thing I'm interested in is, let's say it's squads. So, okay, well, we don't have anything to do with squads yet. We have the idea of controlling a unit or even a group of units, but there's no real definition of squads. Is that just a group? And the point is that no, it's not. Like in StarCraft, you have this whole concept of you control groups, which is our squads, basically. But we can put more definition to it than that. So we need to start adding units to squads. And what do those squads mean? It's just we can start considering this in a small scale, like what it would take to think through it and build it in about a week, maybe 2 weeks at most. If it's going longer than 2 weeks, you really need to split this out into multiple tasks and focus on just the task that you're doing at that time. So you are building the task. You're designing out this squad. So you're going to be thinking about, okay, well, I need to be able to add units to a squad, and I need to be able to create a new squad. And then I need to be able to select those squads. So there's a few things right there. Maybe I'm only going to pick one. Maybe I'll put all three of those in the beginning. That we kind of need them all there to kind of prove that any of them really work, or at least to do it well. So we'll add them. Now, here's the thing. When we're doing that, we need to also take a look at why will the game be fun? These things that are in here, there are 4 things listed in here: meaningful decisions, rapid rewards, chain reaction tree, and sit back and watch. These are not full-blown lists of everything that's supposed to be in the game that mean explanations of all the potential meaningful decisions in the game. What this means is we want meaningful decisions to be one of the pillars of the game. And so if we read through this and we see what it means here, this is an example of it and what it means. And we need to question, can we pull meaningful decisions into the creation of a squad? And maybe when we initially create it, we can't. And that's okay. Then we'll go on and look at rapid rewards. Is there some way we can pull in rapid rewards and bring that in here? And honestly, yes, rapid rewards is going to be one of those things that pulls in everywhere. So the player will be rewarded often for activities, call-outs for the completion of events. This could be badges, completion of a building, earning of resources, or the taking of a position on the map. We want to bring these things out. So what would be a reward for having a unit become part of a squad? Well, having a little visual icon show up that they're in there, maybe having a little verbal thing come up from the unit, like when you select a unit. Maybe they make a sound. That happens in StarCraft. That's part of their rapid reward system. You clicked on something, you get a little feedback. In fact, it was one of their Easter eggs, and still is, like where if you keep clicking on a unit over and over and over again, they start getting frustrated and annoyed. Or saying other things. In the Warcraft, there were these 2-headed ogres, this giant thing that would, after a while, it would start getting rather grotesque and fart and start giggling when you kept clicking on it. And you have, or saying things like, "Stop poking me." And that was part of your rapid rewards. You had this way. It was also telling the user, hey, you've selected something. This is done. We have completed the task that you just attempted to do. We're giving them very clear feedback. But we're also trying to make a reward out of it. And we're questioning, can we do that? And so in the case of this one, yes, we can add little sound bites that each of the individual units could start saying. Then we could start adding little visuals, like when we select them, they highlight, or when we select them, a little spark happens over them, or I don't know what. That's part of the task. We're figuring out what those mean. How can we tie in rapid rewards to this? And then we're also questioning chain reaction tree and sit back and watch. And we want to figure out, can we pull in any or all of them? If you cannot, I recommend focusing on keeping it light. Try to do the simplest, easiest way just to get the task done so that you can get a squad in there so we can move on to some of the more higher level areas of it where waiting until X time, waiting until attack begins, heading into a location, where these more specific areas might have more pull for meaningful decisions, for rapid rewards, for sit back and watch. That they are leading to those things. Basically, everything in here should be somewhat representative of one or more of these decisions down here. But that's your responsibility. You have the freedom to kind of pick anything that you want to in here, where the game is already as a state where we're ready to add it. We have individual units. You can select units, but we don't have the understanding of a squad in the game. So you could start adding the definition of a squad. You could start adding the mini map. You could start adding the heat map on top of that. There's all sorts of things you could do. You could start putting in fog of war. I don't think fog of war is even called out on this, but it's an RTS. That's one of the relatively generic items that you usually see. Okay, so what does this mean for musicians, for artists, for designers? Because creating these mechanics, adding these features to the game is usually something assigned to a programmer, that the programmer is the one going in to create it. Well, and first of all, I apologize because Pilar, I don't know how to say your name. I don't know how to pronounce it. But you've been taking a look at WWise as to a system to apply the sound system inside of Unity. You've been studying and learning how to use it and going through experiments. And that's awesome. It sounds like you might be able to get quite a lot done with that without actually having to go into the code side, while at the same time releasing things to us so we can have particular events to call inside of the code to trigger sound effects and music changes. And that's awesome. You'll be able to start leading the way on some of that stuff. But maybe you don't have it, or maybe you don't have a way to get WWise to start triggering it. And so what you do is you say, okay, well, I want to start figuring out how to get music in the game. And I want to start getting the concept of an event change in the game, triggering that a battle has started, so I want to change the music over. And I want to start experimenting with that. So when you start creating your task, and this is the same for everyone right here, when you start creating your task, you publicize it. You go into the design group and you say, hey, I'm starting to work on this task. Maybe create a Google Doc or a Word doc online or something like that, and then share it in there where other people can make edits to it, or at least comments. And you announce it. Say, hey, I'm working on this. Does anybody want to weigh in on it? You can read through what I'm doing here, and great, we have a link out that kind of says what we're planning on doing. When it was just me, it was really easy to just not do any of those parts and just start building the next thing. As we have a team, we should be discussing what these things are so we can start to weigh in. Now, this also means that we're distributed. So this also means that as we're building these individual parts, that maybe we're getting a little too far ahead, and maybe Greg, having a lot more understanding in the design and kind of the overall image of how everything is fitting together in this, might come in and a day later say, oh, well, this path that you're taking on this isn't going to work very well with this because we already have several things going in this direction. So it would probably work better if we approached it this way because we already have things. The user will already understand this concept better. And that's great. So every time that you create a task and you get started on it, keep open to the fact that it might change. We are not, when we're saving our code, for instance, in Git, we're not saving it to master. We are taking regular updates from master and we are creating our own child branches and changes. So we can save our changes and not commit them, or you just have a local commit going for a while, but then you risk actually like your computer going down and losing everything that you were doing. So it tends to be much better to just have a separate branch. But other people could potentially be looking at that branch and trying things out and then going in to help you. Like maybe you have a bug and you're trying to get something solved. Maybe for audio that you've put in the WI system and you've got that going, but you can't figure out how to get it to initially trigger this part. So maybe I or someone else goes in and creates a little test event for you. So you can kind of change that music and trigger what an event is like. And maybe that triggers us to design a larger system and start getting into the triggers of how our emotional state in the game changes, how our music changes over time, and what that actually means. We can start it out by just putting in a little tester item so it can be triggered on call by the designer or by the musician, but then we can come back to it later and add more to it. So when we're creating this, you have the power to go through here and start taking a look and saying, I want to build this part. I want to build this part. I want to build this part. You have the power to start defining what that means. You can come up with your own idea, share a couple paragraphs, maybe a drawing or something, and kind of say, this is what I want to add. And this is roughly how I'm going to start approaching it. Maybe it's not even going to match completely what you come out with. I don't want you to think of this task as, okay, I've defined the task, now I have to build it exactly as I said here. Because sometimes when you're building it, you get halfway through it and you're like, this would work easier like this. Maybe make some note changes, or you're trying like 3 different ways at the same time and seeing which one works out the best, and then update your document afterwards and say, okay, well, I tried these 3 and I found this one worked the best. Or I was going this route and then it felt like it worked better this way, so I switched to this way. And worst case scenario is that after it gets built, we decide, it's not fun. We'll try it out after tasks are completed and say, hey, this is pretty awesome. I like it. Here's some considerations. And we start dialogue that says, here's some other ideas we can start adding to that area and get each other motivated on it. Or we'll start saying things like, it just really isn't pulling in the game. And we can start questioning, should we just get rid of this feature altogether, or should we be changing it? Should we be adding to it to try to get the fun out of it? Because like I said before, when we initially add a unit to a squad, is there even ways to pull this out? And rapid reward seems reasonable for a lot of stuff, but meaningful decisions, maybe not. Sit back and watch, maybe. Chain reaction tree, probably not. Anyway, you've got all these freedoms available to you to create, but that also puts that responsibility on you to start designing. Everyone on the team is a designer. Everyone on the team is designing based on your personal motivations. But then, Greg, in particular, since you are our key active designer with a lot of history and being trained in this stuff in specific, what I'd like you to be doing is helping people out with those individual tasks as we come out with it, you or I. And you and I should probably be trying to stay in sync on what those are. But I'm not planning on working really far ahead. We've got the game done now, and then we're going to add step by step to it and figure out what's fun, what works, what doesn't. We might get about halfway through and realize we've only finished half of the commercial, but it feels ready. It feels ready to demo. And great, that's awesome. When we feel it's ready to demo, then we can go out and start demoing it. We can release it in alpha or beta or something along those lines. And it's based on how we feel the project is, particularly as a team. That everyone is kind of starting to feel that this is ready to get out there and this is a good release stamp on it. And yes, maybe there's more things we're excited about, but we can keep releasing those down the road and get stuff out there for people to play. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We are using the 30-second commercial to help define what it is that we are going to take on individual tasks, which you pick on your own. If you don't know how to do part of it because it ties in with requirements or skills that you don't possess but need to be paired up with yours, bring that up and ask a programmer to talk with you, ask an artist to talk with you, ask a musician to talk with you to help you figure it out. Maybe it can be that you actually work together. Maybe it can be that they just give you some pointers and then you've got everything that you need. But then everyone should be ready and paying attention and looking at what other people are doing in this and chiming in and saying, hey, I like what you're doing with the squad system. Maybe what do you think about adding this? And the person who's jumped in, they've kind of taken the core responsibility of it. And so primarily it's only Greg and myself who would basically be kind of like stepping in and saying, okay, we need to stop that and get a discussion going on why that is important to change and go in a different direction. But it is that is part of what's going to happen. It can happen during the design phase where we decide, okay, we're kind of designing this step and it works or it doesn't. Or we're going to say that, okay, yeah, let's go with it. Let's start building it. And you start building it. You can just outline what you're doing and start going with it, but then expect that these changes and conversations are going to be coming in. And sometimes myself or Greg will be chiming in and saying, we really should be changing these things that, no, there's some proven stuff about why this particular technique does not work well. And so if you are going to do it, we need to at least figure out how to get around this problem and express and make sure that this is verbalized. But either way, as an individual developer doing this stuff, you can just still try stuff. You just go build it, experiment. And if you like it and you didn't even have a task that was public for it, show what you created as like a little proof. And if we like it, great. We'll just keep it in the game. And that's awesome. And that's how this game is going to get built. You pick your tasks, your freedom, your choice. You pre-isolate it, trying to identify what elements of motivation are, and also take a look at how it will make money. And a lot of cases, this is not going to apply to what you're doing, but in other cases, it will. In fact, I can just take the teaching out of this one. Goodbye. Yes. Okay, because that doesn't actually help out what anyone else is going to be doing in this. There's just some extra call-outs. That's not needed. Okay. Go find a task for yourself. Go take a look at what's in the game now. If you're having trouble accessing the repo, reach out to me or just reach out in the group, and whoever can help out first, great. And then download it, make sure you can run it, and then start picking tasks. And then let's start talking about what those tasks are. Raise up a one-liner in the design chat room and just kind of say, hey, I'm starting on this part and I'm doing, this is how I'm maybe a one paragraph or something that kind of says this is what I'm planning on doing, or it's just a link to a document and with a one-liner that says what it's about. But in the document, you express a couple paragraphs or drawings and pass it on, and then you get started. And then just expect that we will be chiming in during this and then talking about it. And do not check into master. Do not check your stuff into master. Check your stuff into your own branch. Create a branch for it, preferably on the actual item, not just like one under your name that all of your stuff goes into or something. Make sure you're pulling in master when new changes come, or main when new changes come. And we should be good. We should be able to get this stuff done and get a lot out of it and get something we're really happy with.